We'll just sign on in 25 minutes.
Greetings in the love and light of the One Infinite Creator. I am Andrii, and I'm here joined with Simon Michaud, Peter Sternlight, Ivor Loffing, and just have myself playing in the background, and John Peach and Jordan. And we are still waiting for Charlie to join us. There was a bit of a schedule confusion, so as Simon was mentioning, he might join us in 25 minutes. And so we're just going to start with a presentation that Simon Michaud has, and then hopefully we'll just have a discussion on that, and then hopefully Charlie will be in. Okay, and then John Peach also has a presentation on EROI, and well, we could do an EROI-based one even if Charlie doesn't. Okay, go ahead, Simon.
All right.
You know how to share screen?
I have shared the occasional stream. Okay, sharing. So I'm hoping you can now see this.
We can see the window, yeah.
Okay, so can you see the presentation?
No, we cannot. It's not in presentation mode. You have to select the whole window.
Stop sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's done the whole. Okay, come on. Window, come on. Share. Okay, so how about now?
We're still seeing just the slides. We're seeing.
Try going into slideshow.
So that was slideshow. So hang on.
Oh, okay.
So hang on. There's I'm still getting the strangest the entire screen. Here we go. Screen 1, screen 2. Let's try this.
Yes, this is the proper mode.
Okay. So
there, we can see the presentation.
Okay. All right. Rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm presenting this in 2 hours' time. This is a sustainability ideas conference. They have given me a relatively short window, and so they just want me to rocket through everything.
Mm-hmm.
The audience does not really know that much about sustainability issues. Okay, so what I'm presenting is a new blueprint for the great simplification. So first, as we kick off, fossil fuels as we know it is on its way out. This is oil production, what we call peak oil. There's a possible date for peak oil in November 2018. After that, we had the COVID, the COVID pandemic supply disruptions. That's the dip. But after that, things came up to a plateau, and we're still on that plateau, and it's looking increasingly like that's now going to decline. So this actually may be peak oil. Now, it's more than 5 years in the past. And to paraphrase Matt Simmons, the longer that peak is there, the harder it becomes to exceed that peak. So fossil fuels are going one way or another, remembering that 81% of oil reserves are actually declining in the background. Right, so the questions asked is, well, here's plan B, the green transition, solar panels, wind turbines, electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cells. So will it work? And will it work for everyone? And what I'm really asking, but not, this is the quiet part said out loud, can we continue to resource this? Right, long story short, I actually developed a study that put together the number of renewable technology units that we'd have to actually produce to phase out fossil fuels and maintain the system as it is. And then sum together the amount of metal needed if we were to do this. So there are 4 scenarios. Pink is the difference between the scenarios is the buffer for wind and solar power generation. That's the big difference between the 4. Is it 6 hours, which is what conventional thinking is, or does it go all the way out to 12 weeks, which is the blue? The real answer, I believe, is 28 days based on data I've downloaded from the US Department of Energy website. The hatched column is the quantity of metal required, mineral reserves, resources, and undersea resources all summed together. So it's all the metal that we know of in planet Earth. So this is a log scale. That's the same data on a linear scale. And so here are
Wow.
the 4 scenarios. And now we've got the grey here is reported mineral reserves. The white is estimated global resources. And the black is resources that we know of under the sea. Right. So,
Wow.
what this is all the metal that we know of on planet Earth versus what we need to stand still as we were 6 years ago. Now, remember, it's just the first generation of units. Your electric vehicle wears out after 7 or 8 years. Even if it's 20 years, well, 20 years, we do it all again. We've got to get the same quantity of metal. The real answer, I believe, is between the red and the blue, close to the red. So that puts pressure on recycling. All right, so this information's been published. Here's the bulletin. So it's now peer-reviewed, and let ensue. Right, so what are we trying to do? We want electricity generation, transport, manufacture. Reliable and consistently stable power generation in all weathers in all geographical regions, preferably in concentrated form. We want a low material footprint. Where the green transition in its current form blows out is we need too many materials of an exotic nature. We want a long working life for each unit. We need units that last 50 to 100 years, not the 5 to 10 that we've got at the moment. And once they do come offline, they're designed to be recycled, which at the moment they are not. Oh yes, we want a minimal waste plume with a very low environmental impact. Now that's the laundry list. I think I can deliver on this now. So this is what I talk about. I call this the purple transition. As in the green transition won't work, but the purple transition might. Why purple? It's my wife Tanya's favorite color. Right. That's just too bad. Suck it up. So at the heart of everything is a reimagined commodity sector, what I call the resource balanced economy. This is the circular economy reinvented, where we actually look at resource stewardship very carefully. Wrapped around that, there's a number of technologies. There is liquid fuel fission, which is thorium-fueled molten salt modular reactors. Electric vehicles powered by alternative battery chemistries, something other than lithium. Things like sodium or fluoride batteries, but they all still need copper and nickel and graphite. We need to replace coal in the manufacturing sector, so high-end heat, so the combustion of iron powder can do that. What's interesting is that iron powder can be recycled, and if we use pyrolysis of human sewage to produce syngas, we can recycle that oxidized iron powder fuel, or we can use it as a stepping stone assistance in a process step in the sulfur iodide cycle to produce hydrogen. So human sewage and thorium become the fundamental feedstock power sources for the system. And ammonia-fueled internal combustion engine technology for long-range transport. Now, there are some serious issues with this that need to be overcome with engineering capacities, engineering problem solving. But in the threat matrix, in terms of what challenges face us, ammonia ICE still is actually useful. Right, so I call this the purple transition, where we've got a number of black swans coming in. Some of them can help us if we look at them differently. Put it all together. So there's no magic bullet here. What there is a network of technologies that can be stitched together. So thorium molten salt can do our electricity generation. So that's our conventional demand. We're also going to charge the electric vehicle fleet, which is all our passenger cars and what we see in a city short range. And they'll be all sodium and fluoride battery chemistries. The combustion of iron powder can facilitate our manufacture, and also can facilitate and assist with the production of hydrogen. And that'll fuel our hydrogen fuel cells, which is all our heavy vehicles. And then steel production can be done in a hydrogen atmosphere. I've yet to see the numbers and scale for that though. All right, so the hydrogen can also be used for ammonia production, which will then fuel our long-range intercity transport systems. The thorium molten salt reactors can engage in the recycling of iron powder. And this is how we do the pyrolysis of human sewage. So what you've got is things interlock here. The thorium molten salt empowers the combustion of iron powder, and the combustion of iron powder empowers the ammonia-fueled ICE. And in the center of all of it, we've got a reimagined resource stewardship. Right, so this is a network of technologies. What would it look like if we were to drop this into a human city? So this is the actual plan I'm putting together with a group of people. It's an evolution of the Venus project, and I call it Promethean Nexus. The Venus project was started by Jacques Fresco decades ago. Jacques and his partner Roxanne Meadows developed it. I think it formally formed the Venus project in 1980, or was it 81, or something like that. Now, the genius of the Venus project, Fresco was working as far back as the 1940s, on some of these ideas. So the Venus project was, if we were to design a human settlement, let's call it a city, and we use the best science had to offer, but we optimize that whole city to the well-being of the people who live there, what would it look like? Okay, so resource constraints, best of technology, can we reinvent things and problem solve things? That was the paradigm. So my work that's been looking at resource constraints, things like peak oil, and also the degrowth movement, are now take those ideas and put it into this environment and make a hybrid solution. So now this is the vision. This is an evolution of the Venus project powered by an unorthodox but mature energy source, operating to a new resource management paradigm with a more responsible relationship with the planetary environment, and a new paradigm in social contract and how we might live. We're going to construct a technology innovation hub in an unconventional city to the purpose of developing a new energy, raw materials, and manufacturing paradigm, operated to a more socially mature kind of society. We will develop agricultural methodology that merges food production with natural biosystems without using petrochemicals. The principles of permaculture and regenerative agriculture will be used to symbiotically merge these systems together, where food production would then work with natural biosystems, not against them. You might notice that this is actually the prepper and the degrowth paradigms put into this environment. Okay, so what are we talking about here?
So the Promethean Nexus vision
Oh crap!
something like this.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hang on. What's happened there? So
Maybe.
this. Okay. Let's try that again. You there? Okay.
Yep.
So this is I actually had recorded this. All right. So we've got it's a new decentralized energy system. Right. So we've reimagined and restructured transportation network. I've put forward a new method of transportation that serves what we need to serve. There's a number of systems in here. There's the resource balanced economy is an evolution of the resource based economy. The circular economy, which is like systems designed for partial resourcing and management of our resources. Steady state economy is like our systems designed boundary conditions. And then we've got the whole paradigm of degrowth. We will simplify our society. The simplification of complexity and the size of the society will shrink into a self-sustaining ecosystem. The plan is to run society on a smaller number of components. Like, so instead of say 100 different electric motors, we have one or two, and they just replicate it everywhere. They're simplified in systems, and they're manufactured from resources sourced locally. So we're going to collapse this just-in-time supply grid from across 6 continents into one city or a region around a city. We're also going to look at a change in what money is and what it's used for. There's a few innovations there. And this will be the start of a new social contract where we can, when we bring in new technology and new technology systems, the social contract changes. It always does. So now we've got the opportunity to start having a society that is held together by a different set of ethics. This, of course, requires everyone involved to step up and evolve individually, socially. So the principles of permaculture, regenerative agriculture, biomimicry, and deep cycle indigenous knowledge from around the world will teach us what we need to know. And this is a path of evolution. Okay, so we seek to develop a comprehensive plan for social reclamation in which human beings, technology, and nature will be able to coexist in a long-term sustainable state of dynamic equilibrium. That's a polite way of saying reality intrudes itself, and now we're going to do the best we can. Okay, so the paradigms that this society works on, it's three fronts simultaneously. All three need to be in place, and then we can actually talk about merging into the center. My work is on the top right-hand side, the industrial systems, raw materials, and energy. I need someone of the caliber of Vandana Shiva, someone like her, to manage, develop the interaction with the planetary environment will now change. And I need someone of the caliber of Daniel Schmachtenberger, someone like him, to work on over time the idea of a new social contract. When all three are in place and to the point where they're stable, then we can start talking about the long-range plan of a sustainable civilization post-fossil fuels. So what would all this look like? You could describe this as what would happen if the prepper community was given disruptive technology that they could directly control and use. Okay, so here's an artist's impression of, this is actually Tanya's work, of how this might look. So I like the idea of siting this by the sea. And I like the area I like is along the coast of South America, Chile, for example, where you've got mountains in the background. Those mountains will be cut to terraces, and we can actually sort of start to green the desert. We'll be desalinating water while we're generating electricity. We will take seawater, turn it into steam in the thorium reactors, and then that steam is desalinated, so it'll be pumped up into the hills, cooled, mineral balanced, and irrigated back downhill into areas that we want to green. And so we've done a mass balance. So it's going to look something like this. So let's say our city lands there. Around that, we've got a constellation of pilot-scale industrial systems. That red square is our thorium reactor complex. We're taking water from the sea. The steam goes uphill and gets put into a series of reservoirs. Those reservoirs then irrigate down into the city for our drinking water and also supply the industrial systems that we need. And we only need about half of that water, as it turns out, when you do a mass balance. So the rest of it is going to be pumped into the areas around the city, which we will green the desert. So this is a map of what that industrial system might look like. So there's about 30 pilot scale units here. Pilot is like something that would sort of fit inside a domestic house. Everything from mining of raw materials all the way up to manufacture and waste handling and waste valorization. So there you have it. What do you think?
All right, thank you for that presentation. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Couple questions.
Okay, go ahead.
On the materials, ores that are needed. Right from the beginning, you said that it was, what we have is well below what the requirements are. And I assume the Venus project is cutting way back on those requirements, so that would be fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that often comes up is that while there's plenty of ores out there, right? The problem is that they are so diffuse that they're essentially worthless. Like, I mean, you could get rich as Bezos if you could get the gold out of seawater, right? So how far along are we, and how much do you think any new technology might come along and help with the extraction?
So there's two things to say that. First, change the rules. We're going to change the rules of how things are done and what's possible. For a start, what we're going to make and what we're going to build is going to be vastly simplified than what it is now. And we're going to run it on materials that are a whole lot less exotic. So instead of needing rare earth elements and exotic stuff like lithium and cobalt, let's go back to making everything on iron, brass, steel, aluminium, nickel, all the basics. So what we need is not only less, but it's simpler. Second thing, change how we get raw materials in the first place. Now, this is a little. This is going to make you laugh, John. Have you had a laugh today? Right.
Go ahead.
So there you go. So a colleague of mine, Professor Alan Butcher. Alan, if you're watching, g'day. Was working for the European Space Agency. They are forming a space research centre in Wales in the UK. Their mandate is to put a base on the moon sometime in the future and to look at the science and engineering behind that. What they wanted was a way of sourcing oxygen and water on the moon somehow. And what they found by accident, as it turns out, is if you take a rock, any rock, most rocks, for example, basalts, granites, all the sediments, they tend to be about 40% oxygen, iron oxide, titanium oxide, what have you. What they do is they take a rock, any rock as it turns out, put it in a microwave, and they leave it there for about 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, bombarding it with microwaves to the point where the rock, the bonds, the atomic bonds that hold the oxygen in the matrix break apart, and pure oxygen comes off this system. What you're left with is the rock chemically breaks down, and like goes to like, and you end up with globules of metal. And those globules of metal are things like iron, aluminium, silicon. It's all the stuff that's useful.
Nice.
Now, here's the interesting part. This, imagine, if you will, some wanker puts a rock in the microwave in the tea room just to see what would happen.
Right.
It has the feeling of that's how they found this. But when you put like a ball of aluminium foil in a microwave, you get sparks.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually what they're harnessing, those sparks. Now, the power needed to do this it's counterintuitive, but the whole system, it's about a little bit stronger than a kitchen microwave in size, but not much stronger. It runs on about the same power as a hairdryer.
Wow.
And they're planning to run it on solar panels, which I think is bullshit, but we'll see about that. But it's a relatively low power consumption.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing they discovered is sulfur has a very unusual relationship with microwaves and will accelerate this relationship. Mining tails happen to be full of sulfur.
Mm.
Right. So what the plan is this. In my site, let's say South America somewhere. The reason I like South America because there's industrial sites everywhere and there's piles of waste that no one knows what to do with. Go to somewhere like one of the industrial smelters. That is one of the most polluted places on the planet. A lot of their industrial waste is full of sulfur, but it's also full of metals that are causing the acid mine drainage. Get paid to take their waste away. Thank you very much. Put that waste into a pilot scale unit microwave plant backed by a thorium reactor. What that will do, it will convert that waste into about 40% biomass pure oxygen, which what do you do with it? You put it in your coffee? Do you somehow reoxygenate the dead zones in the ocean or whatever? But you also have got a chemically degraded rock that is now degrading to metal. You're turning the average rock, and things like smelter slag, for example, into high-grade metal ore, which can then be put into a very simple hydromet process and use membrane separation to extract out individual metals. What I'm saying is instead of going to a mine site in the middle of nowhere and mining tons and tons of rock on really low grade, go and find any rock, preferably industrial waste, use a relatively low energy system to turn it into a small quantity of metal that is then targeted. We're not going to sell the metal. Bugger off, it's ours. Take that metal, put it through a plasma furnace, again backed by a thorium reactor, which has the way of making very fine powder. What I'm talking about is fine powder that is feedstock for 3D printing, or a pilot scale smelter, which will take that feedstock, and we can actually start having smelter outcomes like starting being rod and bar and C sections and what have you. The combination of the smelter and the 3D printing outcome can now make simple products. Couple that with a recycling set that would come from waste that's from the local area. Again, if we're backed by a thorium reactor, the rules are different. And we can recycle things like ceramics, glass, metals. Plastics, I would take and degrade them into, I'll depolarize them and use them as feedstock for new chemical systems. I'm talking about changing the rules completely about where we get raw materials from and what we do with them, and it's all done at a pilot scale, which means you can have multiple small operations that happen to be operating together and optimized together in what I call industrial permaculture.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well,
so basically, you're saying that the raw materials that we would need for this are much less complex than
correct.
What we would need for
yep.
Solar panels or something, and so
correct.
Therefore we can get them from these waste products, and it's not nearly as bad as trying to mine it.
Yep.
Directly.
So there's things like we've got to build the city. And there's things like if we take there's lots of mine sites in South America that have got all these rubber tires that are the piles are so large they can be seen from orbit.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with them. Take those tires, cut them up at site, shred them at site, transport the shredded material to my shining city in the sun, and put them into a pyrolysis plant, which is heating without oxygen. Again, fine if I'm backed by a thorium nuclear reactor. That then breaks down to a fuel oil. A series of distillation steps is some of that can be turned into diesel fuel. So now our little city of 10,000 people becomes a source of diesel fuel at a time when there's diesel fuel shortages. We can also be making rubber pellets and rubber products and gaskets out of that rubber. That diesel fuel will run the construction equipment to build our city. The city itself, we build building materials. Now, instead of using concrete and cement, which is expensive, and again is becoming a problem, there's a field called geopolymers, which we can make building materials out of local rocks. So what you do is you take rocks and you mix them with volcanic ash, and as long as the rocks are the right ratios of aluminium and iron and silicon, if they're the right ratios, you can use volcanic ash as the binder, and you've got a cement substitute. And so you have a combination of innovative construction materials, which there's a whole theme park full of them, but we can't use them because the building code won't let us. But we say, screw you, hippie, we've left the building code behind. We're now going to try a few ideas because we're in South America on private land where the building code can't touch us. We then build a series of structures and stretch them till they fall down, collect the data, publish it, and the building code can now be changed because we've now got data to be insured with. We can now build a city based on things like geopolymers with also, I think, like repurposed garbage or some of the flexible polymer, carbon fiber systems. We also have the opportunity, if we're going to, for example, break apart rubber tires. Out of the pyrolysis process comes carbon black, lots of it. That carbon black can be spherodized, put a sort of spherodization process treatment, and turned into graphene. So graphene products can now come off recycled stuff, and it can all happen in one site. Imagine, if you will, a single shed. Waste goes in one end, saleable products come out the other end. That's the paradigm that actually we're trying to put together, and so far it's holding.
Well, that sounds really amazing and very well thought out, Simon. Thank you. Yeah. I know we have a makerspace here, and it would be interesting if could make small versions of that microwave refinery for people to use, kind of a desktop application. I don't know.
Would you like me to show you some of the data for that?
Sure.
Well, let me.
But then so I just wanted to give an update to our viewers that I tried giving Charlie. I've emailed him several times, and I've even called his office and left him a message. Well, I'm not sure what happened, but he's not here. I can give you his number later, Simon, so that you can contact him
Charlie.
if he doesn't make it. But yeah, okay. So yes, Simon, you can show that, and then I know also John Peach had a presentation, and maybe Steve. Okay.
I don't want to get. I don't want to hog the stage because other people are looking at this. So
Actually, mine, I really kind of wanted to wait for Charlie because there are questions I wanted to ask him. So,
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, Simon, you can take as much time from me as you want.
Okay.
Don't tell me that. What? All right. Okay. So here is. Okay. Can you see what I'm sharing? Is it working?
Yes. It's working great. Thank you.
All right. So what I'm saying here is, I'm a card-carrying member of the mining industry, and I'm saying we should replace the mining industry with something else to get our metals. And this is actually this has actually encouraged the occasional scream of pain from old colleagues of mine. So at the moment, this is how we start up a copper mine. So we're talking about several billion in capex. And we've got this massive hole in the ground, and they're really low grade, and massive amounts of rock are being moved around, and we're chasing 1,000 parts per million in copper, and usually something like 0.3 gram a ton of gold. It can be higher than that, but the cutoff rates now are really low. So watch this. From a smelter, I did a characterization job on a smelter in Europe, and this was a nickel copper smelter. In the copper line, this is the flue dust, which is like the dust that comes out the chimney. Look at the grades. These grades are off the charts compared to what you would normally have in a mine. Like, how many tons of rock do I need to shift at 1,000 parts per million copper to match a single ton of this stuff at 22,000 parts per million? You know, it's like 200 times the grade. But with that, you've also got all this other stuff. And the problem is they're all in they all tend to be put in a combination which is very difficult to work with. So if you change the rules of what you're doing and how you're doing it, then things change. We tend to go after one or two elements at a time and forget the rest. So if we link metal production directly to manufacture and do it on a small scale, and think about the metal itself, not putting it onto the open market, and the whole business model changes. All right, so this is the microwave stuff. So this is the system. That's the paper it's been published. What we're harvesting is when you put like a ball of aluminium foil in the microwave, it sparks. Mm-hmm. And you get pure oxygen coming off, and the oxygen is actually what they want. So you end up with these molten metal globules. And so this is what it looks like under an SEM. So the example of basalt, now most rocks are like this. About 40% of it's oxygen.
I was just, clarity, SEM is some kind of electron microscope?
A scanning electron microscope.
Mm-hmm.
It's a microscope that looks at things very, very small. Mm-hmm. Now, what you're seeing there is massive grains. Those spheres are little globs of metal that are formed. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, they don't care about that. They're just after the oxygen. But I took their results and say, right, well, I'll have the stuff. You can have the oxygen.
Okay, yep.
Right, and so they didn't look, for example, about, what grade came out of this, but you're getting molten globules of silica, like pure silica. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And so, watch this. Find a useful industrial site. There's a smelter in that's one of the most polluted places on Earth that I'm targeting. Put it into your microwave system or a plasma torch, which should do the same thing. Put it into a pilot scale leaching system and use membrane separation, which means we can, without any more leaching steps, we can extract multiple different elements out with no energy. because it's gravity fed. But it's slow, that's the problem. Put that into a plasma furnace to produce a very fine powder, 3D print manufacturing components, and sell stuff. Now, because we are able to, let's say we got some of this waste here, imagine if we do this stuff, if we were to separate this into its separate components, right? So we're not just targeting one metal, we're targeting lots of metals. Now, normally this is say, oh, this is terrible, the energy intensive, too intensive. If I'm backed by a thorium reactor and this doesn't take that much energy in the first place, this changes the rules. The end. So, yeah. So, all right. So
that's interesting. So I guess you need to have that containment because in a regular microwave, it would melt the microwave. Right.
Oh yeah. No. You have to do this sensibly.
Mm-hmm.
After finding it by accident, and you don't want to destroy the tea room.
yeah, fair enough. Okay, Ivor has a question. Go ahead, Ivor.
Ivor.
I was checking out. Have you ever heard of the Cerro de Pasco, which is in Peru? Anyway, I was checking out. They have a mine down there, and one of the things, like their whole business plan, is to dig into the waste piles at the Cerro de Pasco, which is way up high. It's been it's been dug since like the 1600s or something, and so the waste piles are actually high enough in things like copper, silver, gold, useful, things that have monetary value to actually be able to dig in there and get value out of it. What do you think of that? Is that the place you were thinking of?
There's a whole lot of sites across South America that have that basic signature. They don't have the environmental regulations that we do in the West, and so there's piles and piles and piles of stuff lying all over the landscape that no one knows what to do with. That particular site I haven't looked at directly. There's a smelting unit up in the north part of the continent. I think it's I forget which country it's in, but they're operating and they've just recently started it up again. But it's one of the most polluted places in the world. So if we can get paid to rehabilitate the site, but all the site problems happen to be the metals that we want to take away, and they pay us to do it.
Nice.
So here's one for Steve. Steve St. Angelo, he's a gold and silver man. Right, watch this. In the area I'm targeting, there's lots of really small vein deposits of gold and silver that are really high grade. We're talking things like 60, 70 grams a ton, but they're small. And they're not big enough to justify a mining company to go in and mine them. And because they're vertical veins, they can only access the bit at the top. So it's actually not worth it for conventional mining to go in. The locals have found them all, or they found most of them, and they've dug down and mined out by hand. But they could only go so deep before they say, oh yeah, we can't go any deeper now without the infrastructure. Especially the ventilation to get down there. So you drive around and the landscape's peppered by all these holes, each one saying, here is a high-grade gold deposit that the locals don't want anymore, and the mining companies can't touch anyway. Now, we're a research hub, and we just happen to know researchers who do strange stuff. Watch this for a game of soldiers. I get one chap I know who specializes in laser rock cutting and water jet rock cutting. So we go to the laser. We put him with another guy I know who works with AI-based animation. He says, right, chaps, make a device that we can pilot remotely to send it down that hole and bring me all the high-grade gold and silver ore that you can. Thank you. And when we run out, we pack up and we move on to the next hole. So now we're taking high-grade gold and silver bullion back to our shining city in the sun, and we're going to smelt our own gold bullion. I could wind up with my picture on a coin. So the plan is we're going to change how money operates, right? So we're going to have like a research hub that's got like 2,000 research staff and maybe 2,000 industrial professionals running the network constellation of sites. Everyone gets paid. But what they get paid is up to them. We're going to form a credit union bank owned by the city. And the city will then say, what do you want to get paid in? So whatever currency as an employee you denote, is it dollars? Is it euros? Is it Bitcoin? Or is it bars of gold? Now, bars of gold, we can use the city infrastructure and the size of the city to deal in gold and silver bullion and pay our staff that way. If we are successful in minting these little coins, I wouldn't go so far as to call it money, because that's how you attract the wrong sort of attention. What we can do is hand them out as gifts to employees. But it does tickle my, like, I could make something like this. This is a hang on, this is a plastic bullion that's based on a Spanish pirate. I got it in St. Augustine. I could make something like that out of gold or silver and hand it out as a gift. Yeah. Anyway, I did like that, Steve.
Steve, what do you think?
Well, Simon, you brought up a great point, because right now, looking what's happening, two things I want to ask you. First, and I'll get into your question about the gold, and can the Venus project, can that be scaled to the 8 billion plus people? That would be question number one. And then what happens with all that infrastructure that we've built that depends on natural gas, oil, and coal? But the more important question, and you brought it up, is that gold and silver have been money or a store of value due to the economic energy that's stored in it. Because right now, my estimation is about $1,900 total cost for the top gold miners to produce gold. And so there's a bit of a profit now with gold at 2,600. The interesting thing, Bitcoin has now come into the market psychology. It's taken over the market psychology, with especially the new president coming in pushing Bitcoin. The issue is, I don't think people realize how obnoxious that the amount of energy each Bitcoin consumes to mine it, 800 megawatt hours of electricity. Yeah. I did the numbers. And if that price is going to continue up to 250,000 Bitcoin or 500,000, people talking all these numbers, 1 million Bitcoin, well, the cost is going to have to double and triple. And you're talking 800 megawatt hours. It can produce 200 ounces of gold.
Yeah.
The energy for 1 hour. And so the thing is, first of all, can the Venus project scale to the 8 billion plus people we have? And what happens with all the infrastructure? And how does your Venus project, how does it compete with the market psychology that I think is insane, with Musk wanting to shoot off 3,000 SpaceX Starships a day? That's his plans. That's his future plans by 2030, to shoot off 3,000 of those a day, which is bigger than the Saturn V. And that's going to consume 1.5 times all the U.S. natural gas production. So the Venus project is competing with this kind of crazy insanity that I see happening, that's taken over the market. I would love to hear your comments about that.
So question one, can it scale? So this project is geared to be a gateway project. We're building the tools which will change the rules what's possible later. If it's successful, then we could probably scale it up to like a network of cities. How big is that network? Can it do 8 billion people? I don't know, because when you actually go through the thing of mass balancing everything, and it's going to come down to food. If you can't run industrial fertilizer, industrial petrochemical based agriculture, and you've got to go organic, how do you feed 8 billion people? Right, so that's problem number one. Then you've got energy per capita, and for the last century we've been running on an extraordinary energy per capita thing that's really sort of exotic. I don't know if it can be scaled. What I do know is this is the best chance to make the tools that we can scale to something. Okay. But it's a gateway project. As for what do we do with the existing infrastructure? Well, that'll have to be repurposed. But who does that repurposing, and could they be bothered? I don't know. It could be a big old mess for the better part of a century. If we could start seeing things like existing infrastructure is resource rich, that it'd be a way of actually harvesting resources that's cheaper. Remember the Isaac Asimov story, Caves of Steel, and then you had they had the idea of the Trantor planet. They were actually mining old cities for the metals that were in them and the concrete that was in them. So, okay, is that what we're looking at? I don't know, maybe. As long as we've got the energy, everything rides on, do these energy systems actually work? Then you've got the idea of the next generation of energy systems, which are things like zero-point energy, and can they be developed? And they have the capacity to disrupt everything all over again. As for the mentality of the new American president coming in and pushing Bitcoin and the madness of crowds, try this for a game of soldiers. I'm going to round up a small number of like-minded people, disappear over the horizon, land somewhere, and then spend 10 years developing the next set of tools, and I'll come back in 10 years and do business with whoever's left. I don't need to compete with the likes of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. What I'm doing is I'm going to secede and think in terms of a self-sufficient farm applied to industrialization in a mass balanced way. What can we actually do, and what can we actually do, and can we actually in a balanced form develop stuff so the rest of the world can do its thing and we will develop our own systems. Our big problem is, how do we, if we've only got a city of 10,000 people, but 7 or 8 million people turn up and land on our front lawn asking for help? What do we do about that? I don't know yet. So what I'm saying is I'm stepping outside the Western world, but I'm also stepping outside the paradigm that is running things at the moment. There will be a shift, I believe, in what is valuable. I think I saw something very interesting when I was at a conference in the UK, like a data center conference. And I think it was people in government, both the United Kingdom and America at the same time, obviously talking to each other, worked out that the massive amount of energy required for AI and data centers, that they're planning a massive number of data centers. This is not just Bitcoin, but this is the plans for all the data stuff they're going to put in, is so large that wind and solar power will not have a snowball's chance in hell of delivering the necessary power. So overnight, like that, it became politically acceptable to talk about small modular reactors, and suddenly they were acceptable, and suddenly they were a thing, and suddenly they worked. Right, so there's a shift happening in the background. I think all of that is not going to go to plan. Like, the people making those decisions don't understand the complexity of the supply system and a vulnerability to the raw material supplies on our geopolitical adversaries. If China decides to stop doing business with us, how long do you think it will take us to rebuild stuff? So it's going to be a big old mess, and the plan is not to be at the right place at the right time when history changes gears. And yeah, you can come with me if you like.
Yeah, I'm sure some people will take you up on that. And yeah, I just wanted to. You were asking about the how to do the food thing, and like based on my research, there's only one long-term sustainable option, and that's food forests. And I know John Michael Greer was asking last time if where it's been done before, and actually it's been done in lots of places, like in Kerala, India.
Doesn't need a forest though.
Yeah, well, you need to be able to grow trees. But say, for instance, I really liked your outline that you had there, where you had the irrigation canals, and then you can make a food forest from cactuses there. Mm-hmm. Cactus pears, you get the same amount of calories per hectare. You can grow 10 tons of cactus pear per hectare, assuming you have enough water and sunlight. And then that gives you the same amount of calories if you were to grow a ton of nuts there. And also the seeds are high in protein and fats. So you can actually get all of your carbs and your protein and fats from cactus pears. But you can grow other kinds. There's mesquite. and pistachios and lots of other things you could grow in that Peruvian example.
So it has to be mass balanced out. We'll have them a water equivalent of, say, a shrubland or grasslands.
Right, exactly.
Water's coming in on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And if we're smart about things and we design things, and I'm going to go all mining engineering on this, and do things like cut the top of that mountain, put that, fill in that valley to terrace things, but also do a permaculture watershed analysis. So when we terraform stuff, that when water does come through, we don't hold up the natural systems, and we redirect water from washing away our city into pre-prepared dams that can become lakes. So every 10 years we'll have a massive storm, and now we've got a lake full of fresh water. So everything has to be mass balanced, right? And the number of people in the city has to balance versus what's needed. Yeah, swales. Yeah, there's the network of swales and all this. I've got a whole lot of books on. Here we go.
And I would caution. Yeah. There. Rainwater harvesting. Very good. And so I would just caution about cutting down the mountains because they attract rainfall. But the terraces are a great idea. Ivor has a question. Go ahead, Ivor.
Yeah, I was wondering, there's really only one port between Peru and, the inhabited parts of Chile. It seems the port of Arica is up in the northern part, and that was taken from Peru in the 1880s. Anyway, I was just wondering, it seems to me like that's going to be like job one to figure out a way to have some kind of a harbor to land things. As a person who spends time on the ocean, I think that's like job one, and it's a kind of a rough coast there. There are just a couple little places that you can even. Some cruisers were talking about it, and they hit a place 50 kilometers south of Arica, and they couldn't even, there was no place to land really. Anyway,
Yeah,
just tossing it in there.
There's a lot of cliffs, and those cliffs, they're all part and parcel of what's going on. But the idea is to go and find a piece of land that no one else wants, and do things in a way where we're not actually impacting. We're moving into an era of that's going to be relatively dry. So we don't want to have a whole new settlement start up demanding lots of water when the locals don't have enough water. Right, so we want to go to a place where there are resources for us, but no one's in competition for what we are doing there. Now, what happens when a mining engineer moves in on a place and says, I want to dig a great big hole? Earthworks, civil engineering works, drill and blast. So we get to an area that's got cliffs and everything, and there's no problems at all terraforming a small area. We're not talking about a massive chunk of the coastline. We're talking about an area 4 or 5 kilometers across, right? A relatively small patch of area. We will terrace, and then we will work with the local drainage, and we will position the city after doing a comprehensive geological survey of what's on the ground, below the ground, and what's under the sea in front of the coastline. And so we will optimize a place, and if we can have and then you will construct it so we can actually have a small harbor. But and that'll be one of the selling points. We want to establish a relationship. I want to be on private land, which means I can do private things on a private land, but also have a relationship with the local government. And if they see what we're doing, and we're doing things like desalinating water at the same time as we're generating electricity, if we are, for example, generating syngas energy while we are dealing with human sewage, and then we open source how we do that, then the governments will be quite happy to help us and work with us. And so the site of where to go will be subject to many feasibility studies, and it will have to be thought out very carefully. Everything needs to be thought out in a holistic systems context.
Very good. So it's 1 o'clock, and I'm just thinking that maybe Charlie's not going to be able to join us today. So, John, did you want to? Oh, there's Charlie! Wow, Charlie! That's so great. I'm so glad to see you.
G'day, Charlie.
We're all so glad. Hey, Charlie, how are you doing?
What time was I supposed to be here?
An hour ago.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, you're here now. I was just about to give up on move on.
Okay, well,
Okay.
here I am, and it's
Okay.
oh my God.
I've been regaling about tales about rocks. It's fine.
You want me to go in the other room?
No, he wants to be here, but just
Okay, did anybody like to ask me a question or anything?
Sure. So, well, I know John. Well, here let's start with a few questions. I have. How did you first come to conceptualize EROI, and what were the main challenges you faced in bringing it into mainstream discussion?
Well, remember, I was an ecologist, am an ecologist, and that's my only. My wife says I'm talking too loud.
to each other.
And that's the only focus I had back in. So I went to the University of North Carolina in 1967, and I was a literature major in college, but mostly interested in trout fishing. And I went to Colgate, which is a liberal arts school, and I was majoring in literature. And I got somebody said to me one day, there's a guy coming tomorrow that you should hear. And I said, oh, what's he talking about? He said, ecology. And I said, what's that? And they said, it's about swamps. You like it. And that was in 67 when ecology was, not a well-known word. And so I went to this talk by a guy who graduated from Colgate and gone on and become professor at North Carolina State, and it showed pictures of he and his students out in a salt marsh with chemistry set equipment and nets and whatever, and they were assessing the energy flow through this ecosystem. And I remember thinking at that moment, you mean you can do this for a living? And from that hour until this hour, I've been an ecologist. And I was originally interested, I did my PhD, and I can show you pictures if you want, but that's maybe too complicated. And I studied the stream in North Carolina and looked at the movement of fishes, the seasonal movement of fishes from less productive areas of the stream to more productive areas of the stream, and looked at the energy cost of doing that. And so I 2 years ago, I went back and I sat on the rock where I used to sit at night in between, I take chemical oxygen samples around the clock to get the productivity of different parts of the stream. And I would also put in what are called weirs. They're fish counting barriers. And the fish were really moving in the stream. And so while I'm waiting to take my oxygen samples, I think about the moving fish a lot, and came up with the concept of energy return on investment, which is, the idea of net energy had existed, including from my advisor, Howard Odom, before then. But then I somehow put it into this, what turned out to be a very, caught on. And then I had a good undergraduate when I was teaching at Cornell back in 1980 or so, and a good undergraduate named Cutler Cleveland, and he encouraged me to look at M. King Hubbard's analysis, and we did, and then we put it in the context of energy return on investment. And we published a couple of good papers in Science back then. And I think I may be the only Ivy League professor that was denied tenure while on the week I had the cover issue of Science magazine, which is, the sort of the best thing one can do as a scientist. But anyway, that was a good thing for me because I ended up at a place I like much more than Cornell, and which was State University, New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry. So that's how I came up with the idea. And I have never been able to get money to study that. I could get money to study other stuff, carbon and what have you. And, I had to support graduate students and all of that. So I spent a lot of time doing not what I wanted to do, which was energy, but things that are close to it in order to, well, I had a family to support and so forth too. So all of these things were evolving. But ERI is really that and biophysical economics, I suppose, are my two minor claims to fame. And that's how they evolved.
Wow. Well, thank you. And I have a follow-up question. What do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of EROI in public discourse about energy transition?
Well, I have a paper. I haven't looked at my email this morning. It might be in my email, but I'm expecting it to be accepted by nature, in which I have exactly what you're asking. I have 5 ways in which I think other people are misusing EROI. And as I say in that piece, there are many good reasons that you might want to have renewable energy. You might want to go in that direction. And incidentally, I've just been on PBS. There's this really good 6-part series. I don't know if I've sent it to anybody yet, but I'd like to distribute it to you folks. And I'm in the 1st and the 6th one, as well as my dog. And so that's a really good overview. But so we say in this piece of nature that there are lots of good reasons to go forth with renewables, but having a better EROI does not seem to be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Have you lost anybody from this discussion group because I was late?
No, I think it's okay. All the main people are still here.
Okay, and Jordan, you're the guy who's writing me all the time?
Yes, I'm Andrii. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
No,
yeah,
Jordan.
Oh, Jordan is over here. Yes, there's Jordan. Jordan, do you want to say hi? Oh, Jordan, your audio is not working. You might have to click on the microphone. Figure it out. Well,
Was that Simon? Simon, I just got
yeah.
somebody really tearing into you yesterday. Marco Rauji is really, and I think you're right.
So, Charlie, what's happened is I've offended a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, also my piece in nature, we're facing the same thing.
Yeah.
And my old friend Bob Lackey, he's an ecologist, just wrote a piece about religion and ecology. And he's not talking about, Jesus Christ kind of religion, but that he says he's missing the days when ecology was a science because it's turned mostly into a religion. And I think that's appropriate to the things that connect me and that the people who are coming after Simon and me. But I got a piece in Nature. It's not officially accepted yet, but they said they will accept it if we make these further small changes.
Yeah, you got it.
And in which we go after Rauji and I hate to say it, David Murphy and a few others who were making the argument that that EROI studies showed that that renewables had a higher EROI than petroleum and so forth by the time you got to the delivery. And that's just not true.
Yep, indeed.
And
So
we show 5 reasons that their analysis is flawed.
Nice.
excellent.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd have that answer too, because well, I felt that intuitively, but you're the expert, and that's wonderful.
Well, I do
you happen-
have a certain sort of proprietary perspective on it. And it's sad because I really like David Murphy and I admire most of what he does. And he's done a very, very good analysis with Jed Dorsheimer in the Biophysical Economics Institute. And this too I can send out to you. And it's really excellent. So, I mean, he's capable of excellent work, but he just got off on his harmonization thing, which I think, I mean, I'm all for harmonization. I just want to do it right.
So what's happened? Oh, sorry.
You know, these people are not familiar to me except Jordan and Simon, and I guess Andrea. Can you tell me who you are in one sentence?
Well, no, Steve.
Sure. So
Sure.
Go ahead, Peter.
I'll go. So Charlie, you and I have exchanged emails. Richard Ha and I worked together for quite some time. I'm here in Hawaii, and so that's
indeed you're flying above it. If I look on my screen,
I am.
Okay.
Please say hello to Richard, and I'm sure my wife wants to say hello to him too. Did I meet you when I was with Richard?
No, we've never met in person, but we have exchanged a number of emails. Okay. So it's very nice to meet you virtually.
So Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Charles. I run the SRS Rock Report website, and I also communicate with the Peak Oil chat on Google with Gmail with Jean Herrera, and you're included, and so there's a lot of emails that go back and forth.
I see.
I think he just sent. I just put out a new post on the on Peak Oil, but no, I really do appreciate your work. And maybe after everybody can introduce themselves, the one question I wanted to ask you: you did an excellent paper on trying to give an idea what the minimum EROI from oil was, or EROI to run a modern society. Any updates? And have you thought at all, and this is a tough question, how debt has changed kind of, or maybe stretched the EROI?
Here's my dog who's come to visit me.
What a great dog.
Yeah, he's a very good hunting dog too. He's a real professional English setter. And we're going hunting in a couple of days. Even at 81, I can still do that. I'm happy to say. Peter not Peter. Who was I just talking to? Steve. Can you distribute the PBS series that I'm going to send? Can Andrew? Can you?
Yeah.
Andrii. Can you send me an email with everybody's email or something, and I'll send you all what I would like to talk to you all about. And sure. Steve, I'll answer your question in a bit. Okay. Who else wants to say?
And I've known about peak oil for many years, probably since the Scientific American article in 1998. I tried to ignore it, and it just kept coming back. One of my students told me about it, and I made one of the least popular films in the world called Peak Oil: A Love Story, which is on YouTube right now. Built, electric cars and did all sorts of stuff with my students. But overall, I just think it's not a very popular concept if you really think about it.
Yeah. Well, I think, I don't know how, are any of you on my energy listserv?
I think.
Oh my God.
Oh,
well,
Simon.
I'll send you the last couple, but I've been sending that out for 25 years, and it's got 800 members. And it's whatever comments I have and so forth. So, well, and Steve, I just want to say, I talk with Jean Larrère. We email almost daily, so I am very connected with him, and I hope you all have seen the paper we did together that we published last year on oil. And but my last energy listserv really talked about how we blew peak oilers blew fracking, but I think we're getting to the end of the good stuff in fracking. And fracking, has apparently a pretty high EROI. I did a rough calculations of 20 to 1. And Adam Brandt at Stanford, who's very good in my opinion, got 30 to 1. And before that, we were down to about 6 to 1 with conventional oil. And what you don't realize is that when you drill a well down into the fracking, you're intercepting the mother rock, the rock formation rock where the oil is formed, not the trap rocks. The vertical drilling was getting into area where oil had collected after, but not where it was made, and it migrates up through the substrates, and so the fracking is actually the thing is you'd get 200,000, 300,000, even up to 700,000 barrels. And before that, in 2006, the oil fields we were getting with conventional drilling was around 1/10 of that. 30,000 barrels, 20,000 barrels, something like that. And so you just because you get so much a flush of oil in the first couple of years, it's so much that the ERI is pretty good. And I wrote, oh gosh, I hope I get all this to you. I wrote an article about that, how that had come to the help of Donald Trump's economy, because people were losing money drilling and fracking, and yet the United States was awash with oil, and the price was way down to $20 a barrel or something. And so that this, like with Thatcher, the reason they did so well, the reason that conservative politics looked like it was doing so well, was that the return, that they were getting a lot of oil at their time. That the North Sea came online when Thatcher was prime minister, et cetera. So it's not nearly enough done about the relation between oil availability and how well economies go, and hence how well politicians do. And I gave a talk yesterday at was called KCOR, the Canadian study for limits to growth, Club of Rome, KCOR. So I gave a talk to them yesterday, which I guess, again, I probably should make available to you if you want. And I just played part of the PBS special on energy. And oh gosh, it's great to have an audience who gives a shit. And when I said, and part of my title is what worries me most, and what worries me most. I got that title. I gave a talk in Italy, and they did the translation at the same time I was speaking, so neither Italians nor English could hear because it was muddied by the translator. So I tried to give this talk. I was originally going to give it again in the KCOR, and then I got this PBS stuff, so I added that in. So anyway, what worries me the most is that as EROI goes down, the price of oil has to go up because you're using more and more of your product to get it, and then and as you over time, except for fracking, EROI goes down, 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 down. And as that happens, the price of oil will go up. The price of oil, since everything uses oil essentially in our economy, then the price of everything goes up, and then that's inflation. And people blame leaders, and that makes countries impossible to govern, as we see, I don't know, in France today, in Ecuador, and every place else. And so, what's his name? Nafiz Ahmed has written a beautiful book on this. And anyway, that's going on now, and it's just amazing how people don't understand this. They blame leaders when they should be looking at depletion. And how do we get that? What do you guys do? Do you guys have any influence? And Simon has some influence. Anybody else?
Well, I'm also emailing the Canadian politicians about it. I don't know, like at least the local ones are aware of what I'm talking about. But I think that the higher ups, like Ontario, I think they completely disregard it. But the federals, they may.
Some of the cake or no, some of these people I talked to yesterday are well situated. I say so somehow we got to get Andrii. Andrea, how do you pronounce your name?
Andrii.
Andrii, are you Canadian?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Ukraine, but I've been living in Canada over 30 years.
Yeah, Canadian. Yeah. All right, who? John Peach? I haven't heard who you are.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So it sounds like we had slightly similar paths. I went to grad school at UNC and NC State, but in math.
I'm sorry.
The closest I got to anything biological, I remember one day I went in to talk to my advisor about a proof, and it was a messy proof, and he said, "Oh, this is just so biological."
Did you ever go hiking out in Duke Forest?
Oh yeah, and in fact, we live in Carborough now. So.
Oh, you do? I used to live in Carborough.
Oh, really? Where?
I don't remember the street. You send me a map, I'll tell you. It's you go across the railroad tracks and take a right.
Yep, Weaver Street, and near Weaver Street. Then
I don't know. It was a long time ago. Carborough used to be, down at the heels, and now it's very glitzy. You're a fancy neighborhood of Chapel Hill.
Yeah, well, some places. I don't know whether it's that fancy, but anyway, we like it.
Yeah, I like Carborough. But boy, I got a very long piece, John, on my relation to New Hope Creek.
Yeah.
So, you know where the concrete bridge is in Duke Forest? Yeah. Where the water flows over it in a flood?
Yeah.
Okay, 100 meters upstream from that was my principal sampling station for my PhD.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I'll have to go visit.
And I'll send you stuff that you'll like a lot, I guess. What do you do, John?
Oh, well, I'm retired now.
You're retired?
Yeah, I was at MIT Lincoln Lab for most of my years.
Okay.
John is one
you
of the
look
two
like an engineer in the background with your little toys over there on the.
Charlie.
Yeah. So actually, my undergrad degree was in mechanical engineering, and I spent about a decade working in energy conservation, and then went back to grad school in math. Wound up doing basically, rocket science kind of stuff at MIT. So anyway,
I can send you some fun stuff. I think you'll like. I don't know.
So Charlie, John's one of the 2 or 3 best oil analysts in the world,
according to Simon.
According to everyone I know.
Really?
John is just very humble. Yeah.
How soon are we gonna reach peak with fracking?
Yeah, I could. Well, if you like, I can show you some analysis I've done, some math on this.
Sure.
I don't want, with that? As long as it's based on data.
It's based on your data.
Oh, no. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
All right.
Okay, let's just finish the round robin. Who
Pressure
else we
is
got?
on.
Oh, he wants
I
to
know
finish the
who
roundup.
Simon is.
Okay, well, there's Jordan. Did you want to try speaking? Can you? No, we still
Turn
can't
on
hear
your
you.
microphone.
Yeah, Jordan's microphone doesn't seem to be working. If you click on the little arrow near the microphone, you might be able to select a different microphone.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Okay, now we hear you.
Yeah, because I use it often. I mean, my work is a totally different field. I work like in
Could you
finance.
speak a little louder, please?
I work in finance, so I'm kind of amateur compared to you guys. So I just got excited by all the topics that have been going around for the last few years since I heard about like peak oil, like 2020, I think it was the first time. And so I just got enthusiastic about the whole idea, as well as the plasma physics.
Jordan, you might like if you can go to this address. I'll send it, but you write it down. Do you have a pencil?
Well, I can just use my. I'll just write
All right.
down on a word.
www.
Hold on a second. Go ahead.
.bpe Institute. One word. That's
BP.
Biophysical Economics Institute. BPE Institute.
Okay.
.org. And I got together with a bunch of financial people and generated this website to which I would like all of you to become members of and involved in, perhaps, and whatever.
I think I've looked at it before.
But anyway, and it has on page 2, go to the bottom of page 2, and it talks about EROI and migrating fish. I mean, I'm fundamentally an ecologist. They called me a biophysical economics on the PBS show, but I'm really an ecologist. So there it is. Yeah. Okay. Go to the second page. Can you go to the second page?
I'm trying. Hold on. Where's the second? This is the. Is there a who or a what?
You got to click over on the side. Go over on the right, far right.
All right, get involved.
I think. Well, I don't know where it is, but there should be a whole page with salmon and me.
Try under resources.
No. Well, anyway, look around on it and see if you can find it. If it's not there, I'd like to know. It should be. Okay, you said you wanted to ask me questions apparently, and somebody had already asked me about what's the minimum EROI. Let's see, has everybody had a chance to introduce yourself?
Charlie, I've got to go. I've got my next conference in a couple of minutes, and I need to check the link.
Simon, is there anything I can do to help you with your?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So you're still running the Journal of Sustainability, right?
Yes.
I've got not one but 2 papers for you. One is the Purple Transition, and the second one would be the description of the Venus project that I'm actually engaging in, of the application of the Purple Transition.
Yeah.
You've got emails about it. Is that cool? Can I talk to you about that on email?
Sure. Or right now, ask me a quick question.
So yes, well, I've got the Purple Transition paper. It's more or less ready to go, and it's like the green transition won't work, and the purple transition is going to be a network of old technologies, but are used differently. Can I showcase it in your journal?
We'd love that, probably with this one proviso. We're not there to take sides.
Sure.
Even though personally I'm sympathetic.
Okay.
We're not there to take sides, and we're likely to subject you to some a friendly and a probably less friendly reviewer.
Yeah, we can do that. That's no problem.
And I want, what I would really like is a discussion point by point.
Mhm.
And have you ever seen the one that I did with Dale and Pimentel? Because remember the big argument about whether EROI of oil, ethanol from corn was greater than one or not.
Yeah.
Um, and I wrote a paper with the two. I got the two oppositions together and looked at the reason for. The main reason for the difference was that the energy credit that was given to the corn mash that was fed to pigs made the ethanol from corn, knocked it up to be barely energy profit.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I'll send you that, and you can use that as an example. And I would really love, Simon, to do that with you. And I don't know, Rauji and I, when we sit down and talk, we get along fine. But the shit he says in publications I felt what he said about you was really offensive.
yeah, look, that's come up recently. My work's come out in peer review now, which means 99% of the venom projected at me now no longer is valid. Right? I've offended a multi-trillion-dollar industry. The private sector has already come to this conclusion and has already left the building. All that is left now are the government institutions and academia, and they are pissed. Right? So I'm taking slings and arrows, and they're going to try and arrange me to be burned at the stake yet again. Now, I've called these guys out in a public debate. They're very emotional. They're taking my work out of context, which means I should be able to, if I can actually get them to talk, I should be able to resolve this. Otherwise, they can kiss my hairy ass and I'll just move on to the next piece of work. So what I was proposing to publish with you is actually a solution going forward. And it's a network of technologies
Well, all
together.
I can say is you submit it, and we will look at it and subject it probably to one pretty critical and one pretty
Okay,
positive, probably, such as we can choose, or maybe people we
that's
don't
the
have a
way.
clue.
That's the way.
And
So
you have to deal with the critics. Just peer review. That's all.
day in, day out, the critics are coming after me whether I like it or not, and
Okay.
they're not very fair at all. I would like to get this published, and I like your work, so I'll send it to you. We're gonna have a chat.
Yes, sir.
If you do
That would be good. And it's these guys get a lot of credibility because you're part of them. They get a lot of credibility with me because I have a lot of respect for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, well, everyone
And
on this call I've worked with, and the respect is a two-way street.
I'm happy
Good.
to post public.
okay, well, you go to your other meeting, and all right, EROI. Who asked me the question about what's the minimum EROI? So the first thing is I don't know. I look at history. I like very much the work that Kerry King published in 2015 about England. And he looked at what proportion of English society was dedicated to making energy. And energy at that time was, forestry, agriculture, animal husbandry, draft animal husbandry. I don't think he included wind in there, but wind was really important because it moved sailing ships around. And he calculated that about half of everybody working in England from 1300 to 1750 were working in getting the energy to run themselves and the other half of economies. So it's pretty crude, but I would say that the EROI was something like 2-1 then. And England, produced Shakespeare and whatever else during that period. But most people didn't go more than 20 miles from where they were born, and they might have had a good food or not, depending on whether they could hunt and fish, and whether they had access to land to grow stuff. And then but ERI England 1300 to 1750 was 2-1, and then coal came along and it went up to about 5-1, and then oil came around and it went up to 10 or 20-1. So you can run a society at 2-1. England did. And all of this is written up in I guess, a number of places, but my book on energy return on investment, and also the one on energy and the wealth of nations, both of these are available from Springer. And make sure you get the second edition of that. I think it's chapter 6 of that at a guess, but I don't know. It's in there somewhere. And or you can always email me and ask me specific questions, and I'll try to get you specific answers. Then
I was just wondering about
louder, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No. Okay. So I was just wondering about that 2-1. Did you include like the trees they were using? Because I heard trees are like 30-1.
I can't quite hear you.
Oh. Is that?
Well, I can turn up my mine are very low for some reason. Oh no, not very low. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Not great.
Okay.
Where's your microphone? Your microphone.
You were better before, Andrii.
Better before?
Your microphone
That's
is
good,
up
right
on
there.
your side.
That's good right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. And so I was just wondering about that 2-1 that you were talking about. Does that include the trees? Because I know Steve, he often talks about the trees, and they're like 30-1 EROI, or.
Yeah, well, I've calculated 30-1 a long time ago for pickup truck and chainsaw wood. I don't know exactly what it was back then, but it's just the proportion of total economic activity that was devoted to the energy sector.
That makes sense. I don't think what Charles is saying. I don't think he's including with the actual energy return on investment of using wood fuel, but how much the population was used in getting the fuel, which was the different energy sources at the time.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but my guess is, and Victor Court, Fazane and Court did a really good study. And they used economic values, and except for the most recent ones, which I think were distorted. Anyway, I think 2-1 is. It was low, whatever it was. and so, and kings were rich and dukes were rich, but most people were poor. Yes, Ivor.
I just wanted to say I had a woodlot, and you only get about a half a cord per acre per year sustainably if you want to just keep the things going. So what you're doing is you're growing trees, and then it only, maybe you get a big flush every 20 years when you cut these trees, but you don't get more than that half a cord per acre per year sustainably.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple of acres behind my house when I lived in Syracuse, and I could just take the trees as they died. Forests, natural forests, thin themselves, And this was hop hornbeam, which is terrific wood, very hard wood. And I got my own. I've heated my house with wood that I cut myself for every year except one until now of my adult life. So I'm quite familiar with this. Yeah. You don't get a lot on a sustained basis, but nobody had been harvesting it for 20 years, and so I could go in and pick up a lot of dead stuff hanging around that was very good firewood. And I didn't count the tractor. I had a little tractor, so that was part of the deal. And I didn't count the time I drove the tractor into the pond, and that cost me $1,200. You know, so.
Oh yeah, that's.
I drove the tractor into the pond, and that cost me $1,200. You know, so.
I didn't quite hear that, but something about tractors and ponds.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. What do you call it?
Hear that?
Yeah.
So you can run a society that didn't have modern medicine and where everybody stayed with 20 miles from where they were born.
You can run a society that didn't have modern medicine and
you're echoing.
where everybody stayed with 20 miles. Yeah, Andrii, I think you're playing back. Somebody's playing back a replay of this. It might be off YouTube or something with a delay.
Who wishes to speak?
Play of this. It might be off YouTube or something with a delay. Who wishes to speak?
Andrii, please run this meeting.
Can't hear you. Please run this meeting.
Maybe it needs to be muted.
I have some slides I'd like to run by and get your input on it.
Okay. Do you like John Larare, John?
Yeah, in fact, that was one of the questions I've got.
Okay, good. Then we'll get along.
Okay. Let's see. How do I share this?
How long have you guys been meeting?
Over a year now, right?
Over a year now, yeah.
Over a year. We have met with a lot of famous people. Ugo Bardi. Last week was John Michael Greer. A lot of big people.
I'm not sure what I think about Greer, but I sure like Bardi. But I don't know.
Let's see. I don't know.
Whoever it was that's running a website or whatever, I would really love it for you to distribute anything I have, that, especially the PBS thing. And if you call your local PBS, they'll run it. If you get a few people together, they'll run it for you.
Okay, you guys see this chart?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are sort of two sides of this thing. I want to start with Simon's stuff. This was work that Simon did, and he showed something more recent today, but it's basically the same ideas here, that we're very short on the renewable reserves that we need, the ore reserves that we would need to make a transition.
Is this global or?
I think it is.
Huh?
Yeah, I think it, yeah, and of course Simon is the world's best geologist. Just wanted to get that out there. So anyway, so it's showing that we only have about 20% of the copper we need just for the first phase of the transition. Nickel and lithium are 10%, and some of these others are really low. But I think the key thing here is that the rates are so low. You'd have to pick up, I guess it's cobalt mining, is that cobalt or lithium? It's in terms of how fast we were mining these materials in 2019, they are orders of magnitude below what we need to make the energy transition within the time that's required. So anyway, that's one side of this thing. And then the other thing, I was looking at EROI, and you'll see I reference you here. So this came from this paper that came out in 2014. I just took the median value here of the various sources, and so I look at of course, EROI is energy output divided by energy input. So energy output is the rate that you get it back times the lifetime, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it may be a complicated integral, but yeah.
Yeah. So just very simply, I looked at kind of lifetimes of different sources, and what I found was that fossil fuels tend to have a very short lifetime, whereas non-fossil sources have very long lifetimes. And so
it's just, wait a minute. What do you mean by lifetime?
Okay, so
what's 0.5 mean?
So that means that from the time the oil leaves the well, to the time that it gets to the customer, and they use it.
Oh yeah, well, what that means is that the energy invested in renewables is upfront, not year to year.
Exactly. And
that's
so,
a big thing. Is you got to make your energy, and that's why when you look at the work by, for example, Kaplan Perez, do you know that guy in Spain? The guy does wonderful work. You got to know about him. Kaplan Perez.
Yeah.
And he looks at the EROI of transition, because you got to put if you're going to make a serious transition to renewables, he does 50% and 100%. Then you've got the EROI goes down to as low as 2 to 1, I think, because you're spending all your energy building new new wind turbines.
Yeah. And this is exactly what I was getting to, was that when you look at sort of the rate, that is, take that EROI divided by the lifetime, you get this rate of, how fast are you getting energy back, say, per year. And for fossil fuels, it comes out to orders of magnitude above what you get for these non-fossil sources.
Yeah.
And so it may not be a complete, showstopper here, but it's so low that I have to question whether this is even feasible. And then when you put that together,
I don't think it is, but I don't know for sure. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either, but you put that together.
Okay, now I want to talk about your slide 2, though.
This one?
Slide 2. Number 2, the red one.
Well, sorry, this one.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's how we want to analyze it. And I got really into this back with Cutler Cleveland when we were writing our book of 1986, which I can send, I think, to people. The whole bloody, I've got electronic in the chapter, I don't know what it is, 4 or 5 or something in there, looks at ore quality in terms of energy. And there were some really good papers that were done by the USGS. Somebody, Creasy, and I don't remember their names, but they're in there. And they looked at grades of various materials and the energy to exploit them. And so I think the issue is not how much copper there is, because there's infinite copper in the sea. It's the energy required to get the next tranche of copper, which goes up as as the degradation is going on. And so at some point, I think for all of these metals, it'll be an energy issue. That's why we called our book Energy and Resource Quality, which I still think is really important. And I speak a little bit about in some of the things that we've been talking about. So I just want to, I'd love to see that upgraded. And it's too bad Simon isn't here, because I think we got to build some kind of machine, some kind of computer model. I'd do it in Fortran if I were a bit younger, because that's what I used to be good at. And look at the energy cost of as the grades decline going into the future. And this will be the limiter, I think, ultimately will be the energy cost of the next ton of copper.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think resources tend to be power law distributed, and that's where the energy is going to go. Right. That you have to sort of exponentially increase your energy use to get the next layer of materials. Okay. So anyway, that's why I think that renewables is not viable. The next thing, also from one of your papers, I've looked at oil discoveries and production, and then I did cumulative discoveries, cumulative production, and then looked at the difference here. So,
that's, we got to figure a little bit like that, I think, in our paper, but that looks like, and meanwhile, the official pronouncements is that we have more and more reserves every year, which is bullshit.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I think it was in this paper that you said that reserves are self-reported and 60% of countries don't bother.
Yeah, it's all fabrication.
Yeah. So that's why I've been ignoring reserve data, and that's why I went to this discovery and production, because I think they're the next lowest levels of bullshit.
Do you have any impact anywhere?
No, just with us guys. So my only question here was that Jean Laurent has always insisted that we backdate oil discoveries.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to find exactly why. I mean, to me, it makes
sense.
He's
the only one with the data.
Well, okay, right. I mean, it makes sense in a lot of ways that you say, okay, we discovered the field, this particular year, and then at some later point we decided, oh, it was a little bit bigger than we thought, and so we backdate and put that oil back to that year. Is that the correct way of thinking about it?
Absolutely. That's when you found it.
Right.
And you don't report it. You try to report as little as possible of your find, because you're taxed on it.
Oh, that's the key. Okay. So it was there all along. You're just lying up front. So
yeah.
Right. Okay, great. All right. So then the next thing I did was, I fit a logistic function to discovery, and I split this up into two. I called it conventional era and fracking era, and you can see that there's a really good fit to the data. And the nice thing about a logistic function is that you get, as one of the input fitting parameters is the asymptote, right? So if things continue as they are, then I can say, well, okay, we might be looking at about 2250 total gigabarrels of discoveries. And we're very close to that at this point. There's not much apparently left to discover. Just one caveat here: the only reason I called it conventional and fracking was because that was about when things started
Anyway, I think
happening.
that's very important. And I'm having a big to do with John because I can't get him to treat them independently in his most recent analysis of US. I
Yeah,
say, and you can't get a Hubbard linearization from the two of them together because they're two completely different resources. And I'm annoyed with him. It's easy to be annoyed with Jean, but anyway, you probably know that.
well, the reason I did it was that I started a fit for the entire history of oil, and it didn't work. And then I saw, oh, if I do this as two separate things, it fits very well. And it may not be actually fracking; it could be easy money. Is what I'm kind of thinking is what really happened. But anyway,
can I show my screen for a minute?
Sure. Let me.
I mean, I got so many things, but
Yeah,
just
go
a
ahead.
couple right off the top of my head.
Do you-
I'd love to. I could talk to you guys for a month easily.
Great.
And the only thing I can say is have you got me permission to show my
Yes.
screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know how to do it? So if you're on your desktop or laptop and you move your mouse, then a little bar will show up at the bottom, and then the third icon, which has a little arrow in it, that's the share screen.
Yeah.
Click on that.
Well, it says allow or not now.
Yes. So you select the window in the drop down.
Is faded. I can't do allow.
So it just above it, it'll say select window or screen. Okay, so and there you select the window or the screen. You can select screen 1 or screen 2 for the full screen.
Entire screen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you
allow.
Yes, click allow. Mm-hmm. There. Okay. Now I can see myself.
It's your face.
Yeah. Okay.
How do I get it so you guys can look at my computer?
So, well, you should. Are you on the wrong screen, perhaps? Or you could just open your presentation now and we'll see it. There we go. Yeah, we can see it. Depletion.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
The waves?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, this is just to put myself into a general sense. I think everybody's talking about CO2, but the real issue is depletion.
Mm-hmm.
And look here. Here's the slide like John just showed me that we had done. So I guess we're on the same wavelength, John. And I don't know, have you guys seen like this kind of stuff? This is the energy to get energy, which, we project in the future is going to be much more, leaving much less discretionary spending.
Right.
Oh my God, I can
funny.
talk about a million things. But I wanted to show you another thing here. I call this Journey to the Source. Can you see this? This is me a little bit younger, visiting Jean Larrère.
Mm-hmm.
It is a beautiful farm in France.
Mm-hmm.
And John, the only reliable data on oil in the world is in that farmhouse.
I know. And Charles, he's like 93 now, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we should pay the medical bills of all of France to keep him going. That's the best thing we could do with our military budget is pay for the medical. Now, look, I've got various things where whatever my perspective is, including an eight unit introduction to energy in the economy that I'll make available, including my recollections as a student of Howard Odum. I mean, the important thing for my training was the systems view and the energy perspective that I got for Odum. I didn't really latch on to his Emergy, Emergy thing that he did later in his life. I think it's interesting, but it's too sloppy for me. And there we are. So, okay, what other questions do you all have for me while you got me?
Well, I guess one question is just as an ecologist, since I'm not an expert at that, is how do you see the ecology fitting into all of this? And
Well, I don't see it as fitting into anything. I see it all as ecology. I studied ecosystems, and I studied the flow of energy from the sources, which was the sun, and I measured it a whole lot of the plants, how much the plants made, and how much the ecosystem used, and how much made to fish, and stuff like that. And so I just kept being an ecologist. I'd make the most important thing in the early days was these diagrams that Oda made. To make a good diagram of what you're talking about, and try to get your ideas really organized. And then I've worked in 30 different countries, and I'd be at some place, I'd just be there for a couple of days, and somebody or a bunch of them would come to me in amazement, and they say, "You've only been looking at our problem here for 1 day or 2 days, and you come up with solutions to things that we hadn't come up with in years. And I don't understand how you do that. And are you super smart?" And the answer is no. Pretty smart, but not super. And I said, to me, they're all the same. If you think about every place that I go, Argentina or Mexico or Italy or whatever, and I'd see the same structure of sort of a trophic level of energy, going from one level to another with various efficiencies, and used, often invested to get the next unit and so forth. I've got a recent paper about this. I wrote with a philosopher, found me, and he did his PhD on Nietzsche and Nietzsche's will to power. And he started reading all this stuff and came. If you've never read Howard Odom's 1955, Odom and Pinkerton. Anybody read Odom and Pinkerton from 1955? That's the most amazing paper I've ever read. And I would guess for most of you, it'll be the most amazing paper you've ever read. So I will. Howard Odom, it was not always, he was a little unconventional in his language, sometimes sloppy. In his usage of language, but I've never seen anybody who could think like him, could just see the world as it was. And like my friend Tom Butler said, when you strip Odom of all of his special language, it's just common sense. So it was a joy to work with him in New Hope Creek, in Chapel Hill. It was a spectacular thing to live in Carborough, John.
Yeah, my son lives just north of New Hope Creek. So we've hiked along there.
Well, John, will you send me an email right now and just title it New Hope Creek, and I'll send you a couple of things special. Or anybody else want it? I don't know. Should I send it to everybody?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Ivor also has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about the EROI of fracking, and whether that's
of what?
Fracking. And that's going to be a problem, because it seems like we're just like, basically, it's almost like if you got a bunch of money and you spent it all real quick.
Well, there's a disconnect. First of all, you have to realize that I accept Adam Brandt's work. I don't accept many people's work on EROI but out of hand, but I do Adam. I think he's good. And I will send that along. And he got 30 to 1. Now, I haven't dug into it, but I can guess that that's true. That it was 30 to 1 because I calculate 20 to 1. Oh, he's 31, but declining fairly rapidly as we go through the sweet spots. And we could, I don't know where y'all are politically, but I abhor Trump. And I can only hope that the fracking stuff falls apart in the next 4 years on his watch, but we'll see. And my guess is he's going to have a hard time with inflation. And, inflation, good Lord, when I was doing my paper route, an ice cream cone cost 5 cents. So I know what inflation is. And Americans are crybabies. They have it so good and they have so much wealth. Even poor Americans have so much wealth compared to the rest of the world. I've seen it. And they're crybabies. And so, they're really going to miss Biden is my guess, but they're really going to miss the flush of oil we had during Biden's administration. And gas. I mean, unfortunately, I've lost the graphics that I'd gotten from Art Berman, but the natural gas has just increased enormously with fracking. The conventional gas went down the toilet, but fracking, we produce 2/3 of our oil from fracking now, and 80% of our natural gas. Both are at peaks. So, now, environmentally, that's another issue. It's not too nice, but neither is oil production in southern Louisiana. So, there's trade-offs. But I can, I gave the thing I gave to KCOR in Canada yesterday. I said, peak oil fracking has saved our ass, saved the ass of the United States in its relation with Russia. With this Ukrainian stuff. If we hadn't had fracking, we would be over a barrel, and Russia would have us over a barrel, but they don't for the moment. So I think I'm torn between being an environmentalist, which I'm not professionally, but I am as a citizen, and a peak somebody who's worried about maximum power in global politics and so forth. Well, thank God we could, it goes on and on. So somebody had a question and I didn't answer.
I have a question, but also Steve has a question. But I just I was wondering if you'd done an analysis on the EROI of permaculture food forests. And
can you say EROI so you pronounce it like I do?
EROI. EROI. Okay.
Of what now?
Of permaculture food forests.
No clue.
So it's where instead of doing tilling agriculture, you grow trees.
I understand. But I've done EROI of we call it EEROI, edible energy return on investment. And I've written 3 papers on that with Hamilton and Bello, and I got to send you one group of papers on New Hope Creek, etc. One group of papers on food, one group of papers on fracking, one group of write these down or something so I don't forget.
We got it in the video. it's all recorded.
I guess you guys are my audience. You're not, you know what the hell I'm talking about and you care.
Yeah.
Jesus. That's pretty rare, Yeah, when I wrote this article on the Hill, I talked about how Trump had losers to thank for his economic success. because the price of oil was half the price during the Obama years and half the price that it was in Europe. And it was because people were investing in fracking and losing money. So, but I had 800 responses or 900 responses, whatever it was, 800 responses, and all but 2 missed my point. So
Wow.
people don't know how to think this way at all. And so if you can help me get people to think that way, that would be super. And I don't know how we do that, but
I think that's what we're
thought
doing
I
here.
had a really good idea with this BPE Institute. And it is, but so what? 100 people watch it.
We've all been trying for years. We've all
Excuse
been
me?
trying for years. We've all been trying for years
Yeah.
to get people to understand this, and very few people get it.
We have 38 people tuned in watching us live right now on YouTube.
Oh, really? Hello,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
My email is chall@esf.edu, and you may ask me for anything you want, and anything I send to you, you can distribute to wherever your heart's desire. All right.
Great.
Let's get it out there. It's too bad we can't get one kind of consolidated something, like that article that was in Scientific American. And Colin and Jean told me it was almost impossible to get it into Scientific American. I remember when I saw it on the newsstand, and I thought, "Holy shit! Somebody else thinks about this."
So Steve has a question.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, Charles, I agree with you. The problem is, in my analysis, unfortunately, like the new Gen Z, the younger generation thinks we're going to move to a cartoon Jetsons world. And so we're no longer going to need commodities or energy or metals. It's really kind of, it's funny. We're going to head towards Bitcoin and free, and I see the exact opposite. But what I did want to share these few slides because Ivor and you were talking about the EROI of Shale, and so I've got a few slides.
Okay, just a second before you do that, I want to say one thing about Bitcoin. Is that I understand that the electricity use. I talk about Jevons paradox in this PBS thing, and it's really ironic. In Oregon, all these data centers and artificial intelligence things are moving to Oregon because we got cheap electricity from the Columbia River, a huge amount of cheap electricity. So our renewable energy is getting soaked up by artificial intelligence, which I guess its fundamental job is to put us all out of work. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot.
Right. I totally agree. And I mean, they're moving a lot of these Bitcoin mining facilities to rural areas because that's where it's cheap.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at the economics, it's really going to hurt the local
Steve,
citizens.
where do you live?
Actually, I live in Hawaii, so
try to get it on Hawaii PBS.
I know. You know something, Charles? It's so frustrating to do this research. You're doing the research. You've done all the data, but I try to make it simple for people to understand, and it just bounces off their head. They don't want to accept it, and so it's kind of going over the energy. I call it cliff, deaf, dumb, and stupid.
Do you know my friend Richard Ha?
Yes, I think I do. And you did an excellent paper with was it Pedro Petro on the solar industry back in 2013, and you were showing how low the ERI for solar was for Spain.
Yeah. I think that's still better than the existing ones, but
I agree.
Marco, oh, you like this article? If I get it published in Nature, then I'll make sure Andrii or whoever is make sure you bug me. It should be today or tomorrow or the next day, I should be able to distribute it, but I want it to be officially accepted, because there's nothing like letting out something. Well, I hope it gets a lot of attention, but in nature, then people pay attention to it, and I'd really love to see an equivalent done with Simon. Um,
Mhm.
and I got to send around to you. Make sure, Andrii, make a list of things I'm telling you I'm sending you. But Bob Lackey's thing on religion and ecology.
Okay, Bob Lackey, religion and ecology. Okay. Oh, could you stop sharing your screen?
Wait, no. Steve is going to show me something.
Okay. Yes, exactly. Could you? But Charlie, you have to stop sharing your screen so that
Oh,
Steve can
okay,
share
yeah.
his screen.
What
Okay,
are
there.
we using? What system are we using?
Jitsi. It's an open source software. So where Zoom is owned by China, owned and controlled by China, but Jitsi is open source, and I'm hosting this in Canada on my server just next to my feet here. And so, and I have a good connection and all that. So
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Okay. And what do I hit? Window or the entire screen?
Entire screen if you want to do presentation mode.
Okay. Okay. And can you see this?
I see you are sharing your screen. Okay,
Oh,
now
I got
I'm
it.
seeing the presentation. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to show you a few slides, not to get too technical, but Charlie brought up a good point. It's very difficult to really understand what's going on with shale. And so what's happened is they've gone from regular fracking to, I call it fracking on steroids. And this ExxonMobil is the largest producer of tight oil, shale oil in the United States. And this is just showing a group of their wells that they did in 2023. And I'm just going to click on it. These are 21 3-mile laterals that they all did in 2023.
3-mile laterals. Wow.
3-mile laterals. And this is kind of what they're doing to make it seem like we're growing production or we're not really declining. And so when you look at one well of those 21, it's called the Poker Lake DT Federal. These things, when they were doing regular fracking with a 1-mile lateral, and it was 20 stages, now they're doing 3 miles upwards of 60 plus stages. The amount of oil that comes out, and you could see it's 2,000 barrels a day in the bottom right in the purple, and then it really collapses. But this is what I want to show people, what they need to understand. Basically, all this is
times 365 is about 1 million barrels. Is that right?
But here's the issue. It did 2,000 barrels just for November 2023. Then the thing collapses.
Oh, that's months.
Yes, this is in
to
months.
600
Yeah,
in December.
And if you look at the top one, which is just a line, you could see in the third month it hit 2,000 barrels, but now it's only at 231 barrels a day. And so what's happened is they've really pushed up the production quicker, but the decline is even faster. And this basically shows ExxonMobil's Permian well productivity. And so what they're doing now, and it is very easy to look at this, the bottom left, the lateral length average now is almost 13,000 feet, but they're doing a lot of 15,000 plus feet. That's 3 miles. Charles, they're pumping in 30 million pounds of sand in these wells.
And do they bring it from Michigan?
I think they used to, but it got too expensive. So now they're using it in Texas and elsewhere. But they're also pumping in 26 million gallons of water and proppant and fracking fluid. And if you look at the top right one, which is a green and red line, the green is oil. And it basically shows how much oil is coming out for every 6 months. And it's going up, right? You can see it hit a new high. But if you look at the bottom right chart, it's showing you how much oil is coming out per 1,000 feet, and it's declining. And so this is the issue that Exxon's trying to do.
Wait, put your cursor on what you're talking about.
Okay, what this shows here in this top one, it's basically
I want to look at yeah.
Yeah, it goes from 2010 to 2024. The green line is showing.
Could you make this slide full screen so it's bigger?
Okay.
I think it'll show up.
All right.
Just
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay.
That. But now I think we can't see your mouse. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, go back to the other way then. Okay.
Okay. Let me escape. All I want to show here, and maybe I can send this presentation, all I'm showing is, yes, Exxon is getting more oil per well. The problem is when you divide it by 1,000 feet of lateral, the bottom one here, it peaked in 2019 and it's been it's kind of declining. And so they're just shoving in a lot more oil, sand, they're shoving in a lot more
I've
water.
got another way of looking at that because great minds think alike, Steve. Steve, what are you doing with this?
Well, I use this I have people who pay for my analysis. I've got a group of people, I have a website, and I try to share this information because
can you write I want to get somebody to write, and I can hook you up with some people with the right qualifications and stuff. But I'd like to get an article on this in my journal.
Okay, I would do that. And let me just finish on these two because this puts it all together. Because ExxonMobil not only has U.S. oil production, it also has non-U.S. Okay, and if we look here at the third quarter, which is right here, it shows what their earnings were. It was about a third of what their non-U.S. and this is upstream. This is oil and gas. So their U.S. was about a third of the non-U.S. The thing is, if you go, they spent this is in millions, they spent $3 billion, Charles, to produce the oil in the United States and gas. The earnings were a third, and look at the non-U.S. Capital expenditures on their oil, and it was 2.7. They're spending more money in the United States. They get a third the amount of earnings, and guess what? It's half the production. The production's right here. It's 1.4 million barrels a day.
People worry about the U.S. subsidizing the oil industry, but there's two things. One is that per unit of energy delivered, we subsidize solar, 100 times more than oil. So it's not proper to talk about subsidizing the U.S. And I wrote some little comment in some review I did a while ago that the best use of government's tax money is to subsidize the oil industry because they get back more from what the oil has. I don't know what it is, 110 or 100 or something factor productivity in the economy, and they get more back on taxes from the oil than they spend in subsidizing the oil industry. So the best thing we can do is subsidize our losing oil industry because the multiplying factor of oil in the economy is vastly greater.
It is, and you were right because this is the last chart. If it wasn't for the United States, the shale oil industry, the U.S. and the world, even China, because as you know, oil is fungible. And so from 97 to 2008, the rest of the world grew most of the oil production. But since the 2008 to 2018, and even currently, all the growth has come mostly from the United States and Canada.
From fracking, yeah.
And
I'll tell you two more interesting things about this. Number one is that, if you look up in U.S. weekly supply, EIA, I look at it every week how much oil we produce. And we produce 13 million barrels a day, but we're energy independent and we burn 20. And how the hell do you know why that is? It took me 2 years to find out the answer. The other 7 comes from natural gas liquids.
Right. That's exactly right.
Propane and butane and pentane and octane and whatever the hell. And that it comes out, when you bring the gas above the ground and reduce the pressure, that's where a third of our oil comes from. And 80% of our gas comes from fracking now. 70% of our oil and 80% of our gas comes from fracking. And now the other thing is, though, we can't refine it because our refineries are set up for heavy oil. So we export all the light stuff, which is better quality, many would say. And we export all the light stuff and we import the heavy stuff from Mexico and Canada and whatever. And well, all around the world, and it's crazy. And the environmental EPA will not let us build a new refinery or even to modify our refinery so we can modify our own oil. I mean, we need a paper on the absurdity of the present oil situation. And who wants to write it with me? The absurd John Picha or whoever. The absurdity of the U.S. present oil situation. What people need to know, and it should be in the New York Times. It should be in the Wall Street Journal, for Christ's sake. Yeah, I got a friend. Adam, what's his name? Rosenjag, it's spelled funny, but who claims he can get something into the Wall Street Journal, but we failed twice. But if you don't know his Gehring and Rosenschlag,
Yes.
they're the guys on Wall Street that know about energy, about oil. And I'm on pretty good terms with Adam. Who's a really good. I mean, just all the good fucking minds come to the same conclusions. There's just no room for.
Well, Charlie, doesn't Adam say that the U.S. is going to peak in shale gas production in the next year or two? Isn't he?
Well, I hope it's during Trump's watch. Quite frankly, and people will understand what fools they've been. I mean, for any number of reasons, but okay, who's got another question?
So, Jonathan Frost has a question. You want to unmute and ask, John?
Cool, yeah. So again, it might be considered like a very simple question on this level of thought, but some people advocate putting solar panels all over farmland. And some people think it might be wise to keep farmland specifically for food, because you sort of can't make food from energy, but you can make, in principle, you can make energy.
That's wrong. We use 10 calories of oil for every calorie of food on your plate.
At the moment, yeah. And the related one was again. Are we all agreed that most biofuel projects are basically EROI bankrupt?
What was the last word? EROI of what?
Oh, just EROI of 1-to-1 of
no.
projects.
I mean, forest pickup and chainsaws are 30-to-1. And
I'm thinking specifically of corn and ethanol, for example.
Oh, yeah. I got a paper on that with Dave Murphy and Bobby Powers. So, hey, are any of you guys rich? I need some money to support a finishing graduate student at the University of Vermont. But if any of you got deep pockets, let me know. So anyway, corn ethanol is. I'm going to send you that article. Unless you include the mash that goes to the pigs. And if you do that, you can get it up to 1.8-to-1 or something like that. But otherwise, so I got a good paper on that. I got, Andrii, make sure that's on your list. I'll
have to go to the video later.
To all of you, bless you. Keep it up. Distribute this stuff. Send me emails, whatever, and let's figure out things that are just so bloody obvious to me are just not obvious to anybody else. But I guess you guys mostly, at least, have some clue, a
Can you
big
send
clue,
your
I
email?
think. And so, what are we going to do in the future? I guess is part of whatever. Now, was I answering a question here about EROI? Oh, yeah, ethanol. Okay, no, we were driving. I'm in Los Angeles now visiting family. I can't leave this. My grandson has a really nice house. He's my wife's grandson, not mine. I have no children by choice for these reasons. And we're going, and my wife says, "Well, why don't they put solar panel?" My wife is smarter than I, not as well educated, but smarter. She says, "Why don't they put solar panels over the water distributions and to reduce evaporation?" I mean, there are smart things you can do. Now, I don't know how expensive that is, but you get a double whammy there, and that seems to me to be a good place to put them. A lot of this is discussed very well in the PBS thing. The first thing for you to watch, I would say, for you to do two things. Three. The three things to do first is watch the entire PBS thing. And I'm only in number 1 and number 6. My dog appears briefly in 5. Okay, now number 2 is read the Odom in Pinkerton 1955 paper. And as part of that, read the Hall and McQuitter, he's the philosopher thing on maximum power. And that's the problem we have. Are we running on maximum power and we're just going to just keep competing for whatever high EROI fossil fuels remain until they're all gone, and then we're up shit creek? And can we put in all this? Can we put in all of this? Brave new world of renewables. I mean, that's the question. And the PBS thing, that's number 3, I guess. Or I'm not sure whether I put them in the right order, but that's the question. And we don't have the analysis to do it. And it's why we don't have a big government program like we used to have. Somebody asked me, what's the best government program out there? And I said, well, the Paley report in 1950 was pretty good. And Rickenbacker's report back in 1955, they were good. They understood. Howard Odom understood. He wrote things for Congress. It's all there.
And what was the third thing?
Third thing?
So the first one was watch PBS thing. Second was read Autumn and Pinkerton,
Odom,
read
yep.
Hall and McQuitter.
Well,
and then the third.
3.
Oh, that is the 3.
Well, and if depending where you are and what you know about energy, I got an 8-hour series for adult education on energy. It's 8 things on energy that pretty much summarize what I've got to say about energy and economics. It's it'll be, for probably most of you, it'll be a lot of stuff you already know, but you see some good slides of a field trip that I used to do. I did it 40 times, I think, in teaching systems ecology. I taught systems ecology. That was my main thing. And I wouldn't teach it as math or equations. We'd go out and we'd camp out along this beautiful little stream in upstate New York, trout stream, and we'd measure over a whole weekend. We'd measure a 24-hour flow of energy through the system, and then we'd go back to class, and I give them a series of increasingly complex assignments to take the data that they gathered themselves and make a model with it. So I teach them how to use sine curves to simulate the sunlight over a day and then over a year and temperatures and stuff like that. And so we'd all, and then I published that. And so, okay, Andrii, then send the paper on energy systems ecology field trip.
Energy systems ecology filter.
So to me, it's all the same. It's one thing. Like, as I said, I go to these different places all around the world and people say, how do you understand this? You just got here. They're all the same.
So I had just a few slides to share that are somewhat related. Anyhow.
Oh, and I got some that I want to show Steve.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
Go ahead, Andrii.
Oh, well. These are just some of the. So this is with John Beach's data, and then I added some projections. If our current depletion, if we maintain our current trend of maintaining,
it's just an extrapolation of that green line.
Yes, exactly, or the blue line. Yeah, and then so you can see that we will run out in 2034 to 2040. This is conventional and shale, and then this is a kind of a more optimistic scenario where we both discover more oil and we start intentionally reducing our production next year, and then so that way we can have it for a little bit longer.
We talked about that at KCOR yesterday, and it's just no way.
Yeah,
we all decided there's no way. No, you just got to let it run its course, and what will be is that we'll explain it, and we got to make sure we've explained it well, because we're not going to be able to control it. It's just going to happen.
Right. So
and that what I worry about is the loss of Jeffersonian democracy as inflation increases.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point. And what's interesting is that any of the projections I've run, basically this decline curve is so sharp over here that by the mid 2030s, there's no way we would be able to maintain a fossil fuel economy, just because the inflation, as you were saying, would just keep rising year on year.
Yeah, and what's going to happen? And these were the cheese slicer diagrams that I showed you briefly, is that people are going to want to maintain their purchasing power at exactly when we need to make more investments. And so what we'll do, we can have high consumption for another 10 years and then go off the cliff, or we can invest.
And I just wanted to say one point on the fact that Trump actually, during his first space with Elon, he actually called it a chat. And he also said that inflation was because of us running out of oil. And so Trump had some good points there. But Elon completely overrid him. No, it's too much government spending. And so now.
Well, it's the ratio between the two. We showed that back in 1984. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you increase the money supply, it's the ratio between the oil and the money supply.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let me show.
Okay.
How do I show something here?
Yeah, with the share screen. Steve just has his hands up. I don't think he might have something relevant. Go ahead, Steve.
Charlie, I asked this question, I guess, earlier, and it's something I try to ponder, and I don't know if you have. I just would like to hear your thoughts. It's how this debt has changed the situation, because usually the governments didn't add debt until we got into recessions, but now we're adding printing and debt even when we're having good economic activity. And I think this is due to this falling EROI in the background. But so we quadrupled in U.S. public debt since 2008, even though the U.S. added 12 million barrels a day of oil and natural gas liquids.
Yeah.
So have you ever thought about how this debt is changing?
Well, I published books on it. So, yes. So first of all, when the Spaniards, people think of the gold standard, but when the Spaniards brought gold back from the New World to the Old, they doubled its quantity and halved its value because the wealth was being produced by the land, by the people, the farmers, the foresters, the fishermen, housewives, whatever. And that hadn't changed, but you doubled the currency, so you halved its value. The same thing. And so with in our 1984 paper, Cleveland et al. On energy in the United States economy, a biophysical perspective, that one has a graph that graphs it out pretty well. I'll have to remind me to send that Cleveland et al. And let me see. So you should think of a dollar bill as pay to the bearer 5 megajoules, which is about half a coffee cup's worth of oil. Pay to the bearer 5 megajoules worth of energy services. That's what money is. It's a lien on energy. So debt is a lien on energy that'll never be paid back. This big debt. I mean, it'll be inflated payback, but like Germany in 19 whatever it was, when they had all that inflation, or Zimbabwe or something.
Yeah, they're both.
I mean, I can't say for sure that's what's going to happen because the rest of the world wants dollars, so they bid them up. And we can trade our dollar from, grain from Argentina and oil from the Middle East and whatever else. So because the dollar is relatively stable, the rest of the world would love to have 9% inflation rate.
So you had some slides you wanted to show, Charlie.
Yeah. What do I do now?
So remember, in the middle, if you move your mouse, then there will be a little sideways arrow that shows up at the bottom bar. It's the third one. So there's a microphone, a video, and then the share screen.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Now I got to select the window or screen.
Yeah.
Entire screen.
Yep.
Allow.
There you go.
And again, I get your face.
Yes. So you have to go to the presentation now.
Okay. Now let's see. You want to see my big salmon?
Nice. That's a great salmon.
Caught that in Canada.
Oh, wow. Where?
What Haida Gwaii or Queen Charlotte Island.
Oh, on the Pacific. Wow, nice.
Yeah, that's my friend Carl. He's one of my students, and he's that's the priest there to administer last rites to the fish.
Oh, to the salmon. Wow, that's great.
And there's a halibut.
I heard Norway recognized them as a country.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's amazing, and I saw 100 whales. If you want, I'll show you just a couple of videos that are just mind-blowing. All right, but let's get to what I'm doing here now. What happened? I got to click again. Click. Okay, now I got to find the right. This shows that in the past when this is U.S. from 1950 to 2007, and you see the amount of oil we produced had nothing to do with the drilling. So the question we're trying to figure out now, and I don't have all the right slides here, is whether I don't have the right slides here.
Was it a different presentation? Perhaps?
Look at this is gas. This is conventional gas. And this is peak gas, and oil is like that too.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Except it's going to peak maybe sooner. I'm trying to work this out with Jean Larrère. And the point I wanted to make, which I thought was on this slide, but is not, is we're trying to do analysis not in number of oil wells or number of oil wells drilled or per oil well, but like Hubbard did per foot. Let's see if I can find this here. Just a minute. In most of the feet, we're doing the horizontal feet and adding it to the vertical feet. let's see. Now, here's a new email. I get emails from John every day. Oh, let's see. This might be what I want. This is new from John.
Cool. So yeah, we have about 10 to 15 minutes left.
Okay. All right. So wait a minute. Here it is. Let's see if this is it. What we're doing is we're trying to do the analysis. See, he's trying to do this linearization, Hubbard linearization on the sum, but I think he's got to do the gas independently as conventional and fract.
Mm-hmm.
Do you? I don't
right.
know if you guys. And here's
Yeah,
his
you're right.
estimate of gas coming up. So if this happens, it'll be horrible for the United States, but good for my perception of Trump. So, but what he's got here, this natural gas. What I'm looking for is he's got somewhere the total feet drilled. I think it's down here. You know, he sends these great big long things. Anyway, I'm working with John to get total feet drilled, meaning the vertical plus horizontal.
Nice.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to get done now. And John, John, apparently you're supposed to be a real expert in oil, which I will take as true. And we would love to have you critique us or join us or whatever the hell.
Well, it's Simon that keeps saying this, but I'd be happy to join in.
Yeah, some way. Sometimes I feel like I'm a voice crying in the wilderness.
You're welcome to come back next month too, because we do this every month. Charlie.
Well, I think it's been. I feel like I've got a good audience here, and I think there's a lot of things I've been thinking about that are pretty good. But I need some more. What I sometimes need is just analytic help. Who's good in statistics?
ChatGPT. Well, I do a lot of computer programming, and I specialize in AI. And so, like those graphs that I did, I used basically AI to help me write the computer programs to do the projections.
Well, I don't know
myself
anything
as more of a
about
mathematician than statistician, but I can help. Probably Jonathan too, right?
Well, just good. Yeah, what would be really nice would be a summary of each of your names with a short paragraph about your experience and expertise and interests and whatever you'd like. Okay, we got 15 minutes, 10 minutes left, whatever.
Jonathan, you didn't introduce yourself yet. So I don't. If you wanted to introduce your sentence.
Yeah, so I'm calling myself a multi-silo connector because I'm in the peak oil world, but I'm in the coaching world, the AI world, the education world, so and also the internet marketing. So one of the common themes here is we're not getting this out to the populace.
Yeah.
And this business of putting it in their language, make it story that they can understand is really, really so important. So I'm glad we touched on it again here. So again, just an absolute pleasure to be here. Cheers.
Well, a possible way, I don't know how it would travel with my colleagues in the Biophysical Economics Institute, but please spend some time thinking about that. Go to the webpage. It only takes a few minutes. And that's tax exempt. We've done a lot of stuff, and the people. I was really impressed with the business skills and how useful it was that these guys had. And they all sought me out independently originally, and we put this organization together. And they thought and think that EROI is a critical issue for their investment, their futures, and so they were thinking about that a lot. Some of you in finance indirectly or directly? One of you, I think, said something about that. I don't know.
Well, I know Simon's working for the Finnish government.
Oh yeah.
And Steve, I think he has some private investors, clients. But I don't know if anyone else.
Are you connected with Steve, the other Steve that I saw some of his slides? Steve
St.
Angelo or
St. Angelo? Yeah.
St. Angelo?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's me. And I'm just like everybody else. I have a humble background. I do the analysis, and I have it's like you, Charles. You went into the collegiate aspect. I went more into the private. I do this independent research. Just try to educate people. And I have to tell you, I've never met you before, and I haven't met you personally, but this is the first time I've got to talk with you and see you across the screen. So I do really appreciate your generosity. You seem like a very nice person, and so there's just not enough people putting this information out. And unfortunately, Charles, it's like people don't want to hear it. And they're going to, I think, when Europe, I call it, they hit, I call the energy cliff first with natural gas. They hit that in 2020, 21.
Because they're more attentive than we are.
Yeah, they import the most natural gas in the world. Asia is number 2. And then they're flipped. Europe imports the second most oil, Asia the most. And so they got hit with natural gas, but I think they're going to get hit again, Charles. I think in a year or two, they're going to get hit again.
They stopped growing. It's called secular decline or something like that, and they've stopped growing.
It's all due to the energy, as you've proven. And so I think when the energy prices go back up, people are going to be more receptive of this information.
Well, I mean, what can I say? I would hope that all of you would have our 2 books on your shelf if you got some money anyway. And the one is Energy Return on Investment, and the other is Energy and the Wealth of Nations. They're both from Springer, and it's all there. I've had one good idea in my life, and I played it out pretty well, I got to say. I've written 340 scientific papers, and they all say the same thing. So.
Wow. So I have a question. What do you think a truly sustainable society based on realistic EROI limits would look like?
Just to finish the comment on what you just said. Mm-hmm. I'm a nice guy. Yeah, I think I'm a reasonably nice guy, but come on, my ego's flattered by people interested in what I do. So it's not quite totally nice guy. But anyway, it's
you're being of service.
Sure, I would like to see my work. On my way up here, I stopped. Oh, my battery is running low. Well, on my way up here, I stopped over with my friend Mathis Wackernagel. If any of you know who he is, he's the guy with Bill Reese who figured out ecological footprint. And that's a really big deal. I got to go find my power supply. And that's a big thing in environmental stuff. Very big thing, bigger than EROI. And I said, look, Mathis, you've invented one of the most powerful environmental tools that gets more attention than anything else. And I said, how much have you impacted society with your tool? How much has ecological footprint impacted society? And he says 0. And I said, same for EROI. And so,
Yeah.
Do you want to invite him on?
Well, sure, whatever. But the thing is, we're going to write a paper together, just an editorial, I don't know where, about how these ideas have 0 impact, except in the scientific community. The only thing that has impact is growth, and that might be because of the maximum power principle. It might be so fundamentally ingrained. If you think about what have our ancestors, our cavemen and whatever ancestors, hunter-gatherers ancestors been selected for, it's for being horny and inquisitive. And that's what we are, and that's what we got to deal with. And fortunately, we able to take the edge off the consequences of the horniness, at least some of them, which is birth control. But so that the population shows some hope of stabilizing, and but we haven't dealt with the acquisitiveness one yet. So
could you summarize the maximum power principle? Like because you said because of the
no.
That's because of the maximum power principle.
I'm just thinking.
Oh, okay, all right.
That all systems, and this can be an organism, a hurricane, a star, a riverbed, are selected to invest energy in getting more energy to build structure to generate more of the energy from their environment, as long as they can do so at a net energy gain.
Mm-hmm.
And this applies for hurricanes, which build structure that sucks heat out of the ocean and empowers them. And stars, Odom says I'm not in a position to judge that, but that stars do that. But Leopold, Luna, one of the Leopolds, whichever was the water Leopold, showed that river channels have been selected to maximize their dissipation of energy. I don't know exactly how he says it, but anyway, that fits in there too. And that individual organisms have been selected to extract more energy from their environment and ultimately put it into reproductive propagules. Now, I've written about that in a way that's slightly contrary. I work a lot with this really good ecologist named Jim Brown and a couple of his former students. And we have a new paper on that's a little bit different, but maybe it's not. I haven't settled that yet. What do you call yourself, you guys? Anything?
Peak Oil Chat Group.
Peak Oil Chat Group.
Yes. So that brings us to the end. But we will have another one in January, and you're certainly invited, Charlie. I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, I certainly like to partake, whether or not I'm featured. That's a different.
That's great.
It's up to you.
And if anyone has guest suggestions, I'm open to it. Like you had a friend there.
Well, I work a lot with Julian Simon, not Julian Simon, Julian Darley in England. and he has a fairly long and interesting. I mean, Jean Lerreur would be the guy, but he's too difficult to. I don't know. Would you like to interview Jean Lerreur?
I'm open to it. If you think it's a good pick, I will host it.
Well, he's not a good pick. Like I speak English pretty well, and managed to put he's a little bit cranky. Oh, he's marvelously cranky, Wait, John Day is my closest colleague in Louisiana, and he's more of an ecologist. We wrote a recent paper about the perfect storm of oil depletion and climate change and sea level rise all happening simultaneously, and how and meanwhile everybody's moving to the coast.
Yeah. Well, maybe the next one we could do on ecology and what are the most sustainable ways of living after we run out of fossil fuels.
We wrote a book on that. You can buy a book on that, Day in the Hall.
Well, there you go. So he'd be a perfect
where you
guest.
should live in the United States. Well, you can ask John about that.
Sounds good.
And also, Musk is selling tickets to Mars, so don't forget that.
Yeah, I can think of those guys getting up there and getting their colony going and everything, and then they're asking for some more supplies from Earth, and they get their message back from Earth. Say, well, we don't have enough oil left to send a rocket ship to you, so good luck.
Yeah, basically. All right. Any final remarks, anyone, before we close up?
Those who know my friend in Hawaii, I'm having a senior moment. I can't remember his name, but Richard Ha.
Richard Ha.
Yeah. Please say hi to him.
I will.
Okay. John Frost?
Yeah, very quick one. I'm hosting.
My sister will be in Hawaii, in Honolulu. She teaches at the University of Hawaii Law School. So somebody want to take her out to dinner. She's a good, interesting person. Okay, yeah. And remember, any of you have deep pockets, I sure could use $10,000 to get my student.
That would be fine. He's very rich.
No, well, I don't know. But anyways, John, did you want to finish your statement?
Wednesday lunchtime UTC, I'm hosting basically eco-related workshop, asking difficult questions. You're all invited, and Art Berman actually blessed us with his presence yesterday.
Oh wow!
So, as I really appreciate your time here, and Andrew, let's have a chat. Thanks.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay, Andrew, immediately send me an email list with everybody appropriate's email on, and I'll try to right now or very soon get out all the stuff in order of what it should be read, and I will try to, because it's going to be a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, so as a founder, we leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator, the one within you, my friends.
Energy is the ultimate creator.